Hello, and welcome back to another event preview with me and Yumi, my recurring guest for this series. We're not really doing the entire event this time. We've decided just to do the playoffs. It has nothing to do with the fact that we realised we hadn't done a preview 2 days into Group A. That's not relevant. No, we intentionally did this because the playoffs are the only part that really matter. Everyone hates round robin phase anyway. So yeah, we're going to get straight into it. But firstly, Yumi, it's been a while. How you doing, my friend?
Yeah, doing all right. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. We made a very objective decision, and I stand by it through and through. We're really only here about the big events. We won't talk about the fact that Blast was ultimately a group stage. Anyway, let's yeah. I'm otherwise doing just fine.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. And so something that the viewer doesn't know, but that we definitely both do, is that actually there's now a wager on the line. So we're doing this thing, we're keeping track of our scores, making sure to see who wins, who does well in their predictions. She adds some stakes to it. So we finally decided on our actual wager. It's going to be £100 to the charity of the winner's choice from the loser. So Yumi, get your wallet ready. I haven't decided which charity you're going to be donating to yet, but it'll all be announced when we finish this show, likely sometime in winter. I'd assume we're going to keep this going for a little while. If not, see what happens. I need to actually double check the scores from last event.
I was gonna say, aren't I winning? Like, what do you mean get
You
my
might be winning.
I swear I'm winning.
I'm shocked. I'm truly shocked because, as everyone knows, I never make an incorrect prediction. So yeah, as you can see from the scoreboard now on screen, thanks to Editor T, who is staying up all night to edit 2 videos that'll be released tomorrow. I thought I had Tuesday to work on stuff. Turns out I don't. The playoffs start tomorrow. Yeah, you can see that actually Yumi's now in the lead quite handsomely, 5-3. Absolutely smashed it at the Blast Premier groups. I think, yeah, you got all 3 of your picks correct, Na'Vi, OG, and G2. So you must have a lot of confidence coming into this playoff pick.
Yeah, no, probably so much confidence that I might have even just made bad choices. That's usually what happens when you have too much confidence. You start thinking outside the box when you should just stay inside.
No, outside the box is good. I think it suits you. It's great for like your skin, your hair. I've heard. Just go outside, touch grass, be a confident man, and take some risks.
All right, that was the angle you're going with. I'm like, wait, skincare routine.
It's cool. It's cool. I'm pulling things out of nowhere today. Let's get right into it. So we're talking obviously about the EPL groups, not the EPL groups, the EPL playoffs. For those of you who aren't aware, that's happening right now. Yumi, I'll let you start. Who's your favourite?
The favorite I've gone with is Cloud9, which might surprise people. There are, I think, arguably better teams within the playoffs. Like if you just think about what their form is supposed to be like. But I was really impressed with what Cloud9 brought to the table in their group stage. They looked first off, some of it is partly to do with like the composure of the players. I think they never looked stressed out in any of their games. It looked like they were having fun. They were winning their games pretty comfortably, even against the teams that should have been a challenge. The only game that they lose in this group is against Liquid, where they had already secured first place out of the group anyway. So you don't work quite as hard. I don't think there's anything you can do to avoid that, unless you've got some sort of you've got someone behind you with a knife saying that you must win this game. I don't think there's any way you could like trick your brain into motivating yourself to fight as hard as
a new kind of match fixing that. That's where you threaten to stab the players so they play better.
It's like that's the only way that you can really motivate people to go 5 for 5. I think that you have I can give that to Cloud9. And even though they're in a bracket where I don't know if you'll show the bracket on screen, they're in a bracket where they would ultimately have to play FaZe in their first round of quarterfinals or Complexity. More likely to be FaZe than Complexity, but different discussion. I still think that the Cloud9 have just been stable at this event, where sometimes they have like one game where it looks really poor and then they have some good games in and amongst it. I think they've looked stable this whole time, and their only game that they lose is one that they didn't have to win in the first place, and it still needed Liquid to have a Yakindar that played out of his goddamn mind to get there.
Yeah, that's the problem with these round robin groups. If you're not playing the top team, like the 2 top teams who are both 4-0 don't play each other in the last game, there's someone who's taken the game off. It's almost guaranteed. And yeah, they basically could just lose 2-0, get 16-0 both maps and still go through. But yeah, as you said, even though they gave it up, even though they didn't really have much to play for, it still took your Kindar going God mode. So not something you can really rely on in that sense. in terms of like your predictions. If you think, oh, maybe they're a little weak, they did lose this game, yeah, but even looking weak, they looked so much better than Liquid. It just took that one Yakinda, the non-NA factor in NA success, to actually make something happen. But no, I respect the pick. Not going for the classic phase Na'Vi, which have been basically every favorite pick, I feel like.
That we've had so far, I think, yeah.
I think it's been pretty consistent for a good reason. Both of them have been absolutely outstanding, and I'm not going to buck the trend. I am taking FaZe. They are the best constructed roster in the world right now. They don't always look ultra dominant, especially not the group stage phase, but once you come to the playoffs, once you have to actually veto against them in a best of 3 and go play them on a stage, no one really stands up to the test. Not consistently, at least, so I still think they're the best team to pick when it comes to big lands. Na'Vi is the other pick, obviously, that people would consider for this spot. The reason I'm not picking it is because I've never seen Simple look so weak. I actually had to go through like some stats and dig to try and find events where I actually thought, firstly, his stats looked this bad, but also he just didn't feel as assertive, as imposing. There are still elements of his fear factor in the game. Like I've been going extensively through Fnatic demos. Spoiler for the other video releasing at the same time as this one. And I was watching him play, and he had this effect on Nikodos where Nikodos wasn't taking picks. He was taking against NIP, and you're like, yeah, there's still this element of it is simple. But the actual end result hasn't been as convincing. So for me, Na'Vi, that's why I stayed away from them. FaZe, 4 players who can win you a game, an IGL who can outread everyone, who can outpick you, who can beat you before the game starts. Yeah, that's a pretty insane combo. It hasn't changed all year. I'm taking FaZe to win it.
Yeah, no, part of the reason I didn't want to go with FaZe is because we have picked them so consistently. But also I just don't think it. As much as I want to believe that these guys could be so clutch all of the time, I also think that there has to be some variance that's associated with it. Some of it was Dallas, maybe. Some of it was the events, outside of the big ones for FaZe. I think I could chalk that up and be like, okay, maybe that is some of the variance there. Maybe they're not working as hard. I don't know. There's multiple different things it could be. I just think that Cloud9 have in the past played a little scared, played a little different. And ultimately, like our favorites are going to go head to head at some point, I think.
Yeah, I hope so. That's going to be an absolute fun one.
Yeah,
a nail biter maybe.
And the thing is, like when FaZe have beat a Gambit or a Cloud9 before, the games have actually usually been pretty one-sided. Like when C9 win, the games are close. When FaZe win, the games are dominant. And I think I'm just looking at this in the future because I've seen in some of these past events that the C9 system doesn't even look like it was like built up for that event. Like it looked like they were calling a different style than even they were used to. It didn't feel as though they were taking as much ownership of rounds. You very rarely saw Axel go aggressive. You very rarely saw Hobbit taking a risk in those games or in these tournaments where they looked worse. And to see them now in the group go with that kind of that ownership or that level, I think this is probably the best time or like the best looking Cloud9 I've seen so far to go into a playoffs. So I'm very hopeful in that regard, and I think just because those games are usually quite close, like the Cloud9 FaZe matchup will be a bit of a toss up. But I just narrowly give Cloud9 that edge because I think they've come in with like the lowest variance version of themselves into this playoff stage, where FaZe still have that about them coming out of the groups.
Okay.
It's one thing I've noticed, justify, basically.
That's fair. But one thing I did notice was we saw a bit less of Axile and a bit more of Hobbit in this group. That's something we had this year so far has been a very bad year for Hobbit. Numbers bear it out, and a lot of the eye tests, like as you said, the risks he wasn't taking, like a lot of the lurks he wasn't going for, the things that really made him so impactful in 2021. We saw a little more of that in this group. I'm not sure if Axel suffered because of it necessarily. I don't see why it should affect him. But he did get revved up towards the end, so maybe you do have a shout there that they are coming into this looking a lot hotter. I just don't have faith in them still to outdo FaZe on that stage.
That's fair.
I'm just going to make a quick point of how we're doing the scoring on this one, because we do like to just change it up event to event, because every event has completely different formats. Mm-hmm. So we might as well change it up anyway. It doesn't make sense to carry it over. So here's how it's going to work. So if your favourite pick wins the event, you get 2 points. If they make the final, you get 1 point. How nice, how generous. And then we're going to have 2 underdog picks. Now, if your underdog pick makes the final, 2 points, and for 1 point if they make the top 4. So there's a lot of points up for grabs on this one. It's a big event, and all the top teams really attending, so it makes sense, I think, to give out quite a few points. But yeah, let's move on to those underdogs. Who is your first one to pick?
First one I'll pick is Fnatic. Not a team I had a lot of faith going into the groups with. I think when I have spoken to other people about it, I wasn't sure the whole Mezzi transition and in-game leading. He seems to be doing okay. I think structurally Fnatic look fine, weirdly enough. And I was really expecting there to be massive gaps in the way that they like sort of T-side default. There's still some areas for concern, but they also were our first week, like they're our first group, so it's been several weeks since they've known that the playoffs were coming to sort of iron out some of those kinks. Like we'd see, I think, moments where like Roy would be a little bit further away from the rest of the team, and then the spacing would be all off for site hits, and sometimes we'd even still win rounds like that, and it looked fine theoretically, but if they're tested against a stronger team, that will matter more. So weirdly I'm gonna side with Fnatic on this one because I'm actually pretty confident they can get to like maybe not semifinals might be a bit of a stretch, but considering the bracket that they have, they
could be a lot stronger, couldn't it?
Yeah, their bracket is not the hardest side of it, so I actually just I will give them that edge because I think that they beat Liquid, they will almost certainly beat MOUZ in my book.
That's fair. I mean, for me, from a demo point of view, I had a route around, and I was thinking, what is their pick going to be going into playoffs? And I settled on Ancient. They picked it 3 times in the group. There's good reasons to pick it, as I outlined in the video, but there's some stuff where you can tell they needed work. And maybe those 3 weeks have been enough. It still makes sense to pick them from a bracket standpoint because, there aren't many weaker brackets for an underdog to face. But I still have big concerns about, their actual structure and the actual ideas they have, because bailouts were a big theme of especially the close game they had against Na'Vi, where it's like, oh, we won a round with Deagles, Mezzi just won us round 30 because he's Mezzi. I'm not sure how much that can be relied upon once you get past these teams, but yeah, against MOUZ, against Liquid, maybe it is enough to just do the job. I think I've gone for a much stronger pair of underdogs, though. And the first one I'm going to reveal is, of course, Vitality. So we said the underdog could be anyone who hasn't won an event this year.
Yep.
And I took it to the limit. So Vitality for me, they looked rampant in their group. What was it? Perfect 5-0, which really set the level high. 2-1 against Na'Vi, especially impressive. On paper, in practice, it's not quite the Na'Vi we've seen before. And dropping a map to Fnatic maybe doesn't fill everyone with the most confidence, but they took care of business. And for me, the roster's clicking, Zywoo's doing what he needs to do, Spinks is doing what he needs to do, and the rest of the team is fitting in fine. If under greater scrutiny, we'll see how it holds up. But so far, I am very sold on this iteration of Vitality. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I like the way that this Vitality looks, but I think I've come to contextualize that because I don't think Na'Vi have played their best. I think Spirit came in very weak as well into this group, and NIP, Endpoint, neither of those were really going to be competitors, especially with the form that we saw NIP in this group. In some ways I discredit the ability to sort of play against these teams and have the results be even like they weren't completely dominant results all the time. I think I think that the Vitality, when they are put under, actually crumble a bit, because not only is this a test of whether the international side of the roster can work, but under higher pressure, that's where communication is probably at its worst usually. Even with the tenure of players that you have on the squad, they're not all completely used to communicating in English. And also, as much as I like Spinks, I just don't think he's enough of a propellant for the rest of the squad to sort of pick up the slack, because it wasn't a particularly impressive group stage, I don't believe, for dupreeh. And he's still somebody that I have my eyes out on for how he sort of reinvents himself, because Magic has been taking some more aggressive roles.
Right.
to sort of make up for the fact that they have Spinks, who's like a star lurker, effectively.
Yeah, there's concerns to have about the roles and how the rest of the team meshes. But I just think the previous iteration did just look worse. Just looked so much worse. And they would have dropped maps, maybe even series against these opponents. So to see them look this confident, look this like solid, and then also when you look at the bracket, they're facing Furia or Outsiders, who do have some things going for them, but I don't think anywhere near as much as Vitality do right now. So I took them. I think they're going to trounce whoever comes through to them. After that, we'll have another conversation, because let's face one of Na'Vi or G2 we're thinking. That's a very different topic, but I think their first test will be passed, which you seem to disagree with.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing: is like we actually have I know our picks ahead of time. You know my picks ahead.
That's what I was trying to lead you into. I was like, yeah.
We're at odds here for a lot of things. Actually, like the way the points will work out in the end is that we'll definitely have our winners and losers. I mean, if I'm leading into my next conversation, it is Furia who I've picked, and I have fully recognized that I'm thinking with my heart a little bit more than my head, because I do believe Vitality are a pretty strong team, but I think Furia have. I just have to say, I'm impressed continuously by how good Yuri and Keserato are as a pair. And the fact that, we're not even really talking about Art, who can still take over games pretty consistently. Like, this trio of players is to a caliber that I think has looked good enough in this group stage to have kind of sold me on the idea of them getting an upset past Vitality, making it into the semifinals. But I understand that comes with the big caveat of I've picked Fury as a dark horse in several events, and they've always not impressed.
Yeah.
So I'm a little burned on my love for these guys. And part of that is, a part of that does kind of lend into a conversation that I guess we'll divulge into later. But they haven't been able to get their AWPer up to speed in the way that they would like to. Like, if you look at the Furia games, Safe will very frequently go for picks with the AWP, and right behind him, like an owner walking his dog on a leash, Art is right behind him with his utility or his rifle, and he's like, yeah, you can go for that peek like that, and we're gonna see how it goes. And if Safe dies, Art will take the AWP. He doesn't care whether his offer lives or dies. He just wants Safe to do what he would do if he was still AWPing, but he doesn't want to be the AWP. It's this whole.
Yeah.
But I think Safe honestly had an okay enough group stage as well, where I think they're at a level where they can compete with these guys and really test them. And I guarantee that Furia will put up a good fight in this bottom side of the bracket. And I think even if they do lose to Vitality, it'll be a very close game.
Yeah. Safe for me has been good enough. It's about to have the same conversation about an NA AWPer in about 5 minutes. Because good enough. Couldn't he just be good? Like, he just hasn't been. Just hasn't been. And that's kind of disappointing. I think, as you mentioned, Keserato, Yuri, a duo of riflers on their day, few can match. Keserato, especially in this group, looked phenomenal. Yuri looked good to solid. The 1A, the 1B in this sort of tandem, the Robin to the Batman. But the real question is, what can Art do? Because Art, in every series I watched, I think, this group stage, had a map where he found almost every opening kill, blew up everything in the other team's face, and won the map almost single-handedly, even if the scoreboard says he went 19 and 19. Then he also has a map where he goes 5 and 20, 7 opening deaths, and seems to have no idea what he's trying to do. So that dichotomy is going to be quite interesting when it comes to facing Vitality, who have a bunch of players who will probably win a straight-up fight against you. Like, if you're trying to, mess with them on Nuke or something like that, like you're facing Apex, you're facing ZywOo, guys who love to take these sorts of open duels, and even though Apex has a bit of the same art problem, ZywOo tends not to. He will be more consistent and generally find the frags he needs to find. That's where the team falls down, because after that, Drop is the fifth guy on a good team when the team's good, and safe has been anything but a safe pair of hands. The number of times I've watched him sit on an angle, wait for the guy, miss, and I'm like, can't you be good? Please, just be good. Fury would be such a good team with an AWPer who just hit the shot. And it's so disappointing. And it's exactly the same problem I have with Liquid, who are my underdog pick, is when it gets to the AWPer, I'm just like, just be good. Like, he's so inconsistent. He has maps, he has series even, to be generous, where he looks solid, like he puts up like 1.10 ratings, he hits his shots, wins a clutch or two, and you're like, wow, OC, you did it. And the next event rolls around, you're like, oh, god damn it. He didn't. Why, OC, why?
So this is actually the comparison I wanted to bring up, is that I think Safe has the same problem that OC does. I think that bringing Yakindar into the Liquid lineup has accelerated the planning schedule to what it and sort of added chaos to the structure of how Liquid operate on T sides in particular.
Right.
And I don't imagine anybody's going to say anything against it. First off,
no.
Yakindar is probably the most loved player in Counter-Strike at the moment. Like, he's got the same sort of favoritism that someone like Rops has. You know, everyone's got a soft spot for Yakindar because he gives great interviews, great player. I think good role model for the kids on the come up for the kind of charisma that you can have, and also be a great player while doing it.
Yeah, tucks his shirt in like a good boy as well. Gotta throw that out there.
I mean, he's upstanding Counter-Strike professional. But he has also gone into Liquid, and he has become the captain of this team. You think about how long Elige and Naf have been on this roster, and he has become the captain of this team. It is Yakindar's squad. When we think about the narrative around Liquid, it is all about the Yakindar move, and not about how Elige is still very consistent, how Naf and how all these people are changing their roles to accommodate. It's more about how that's the Yakindar effect. Now, OC comes from a squad where it was very much... he was a part of why they pried open bomb sites. You know, him and Fang used to work together. Now maybe like Grim, Floppy, as well as riflers around him. I don't think OC is able to keep up with the Yakindar style in the same way that I don't think Safe is able to keep up with the art style on Furia. Both of them have the same damn problem, and they've both as well seen a drop off in their performances, even against the teams that they're usually pretty like proficient against. Around this, like the periods that they've joined these teams, or the I guess the captain influence for Yakindar is when he joined Liquid. Yeah. Like that's when OC's stats got worse. They didn't stay the same. They were already pretty rough in 2022. Yeah. But they didn't stay the same. They got worse.
No, they did get worse. That's true.
So I simply look at those rosters and I think I understand you want to enable Yakindar. He's a masterful entry fragger. He's probably one of the best to do it in the game currently. But there has to be something in the middle. There has to be some way you meet in the middle where you can use OC in the way that he was developed to be. Like, that's the AWPing style that he's most familiar with. And sometimes now he's not even AWPing with Liquid. But I do agree, even on CT sides, both these guys will hold angles and miss their shot. And I don't know if that's the mental side of it for them, whether they're psyched up with all these things that are happening in the background or not. Like, oh, I'm getting given no resources. Nobody listens to me and what I want. They're always listening to what this guy wants and what he's going to do. I don't know if there's anything like that because CS is a very mental game, but there has to be some compromise that's made if you're going to have AWPers that underperform. That's just something you can't get away with in top-level Counter-Strike.
No, you can't. But the example to look to a player who is essentially just a bystander almost on the T side, who then gets a massively leading role and does a bunch of things on the CT side, was some Pius on Movistar Riders. Watching their best games, which were all on Inferno, they played amazingly on Inferno when that roster was still together. They've only changed one player, but still. Their best games were on Inferno. You'd see on T side basically be a nade dispenser who sometimes got to do something in the late round, if the round wasn't over. Then on CT side, he got to take his picks, he got his spots, he got his angles, he got to make little mid-round moves and decisions. And that's where he shone. He managed to find a lot of impact on the CT sides. And if you're going to be those players who demand extra resources, who say, hey, we're not being focused, Yakindar's being focused, Art's got his own playstyle, when you do get your chance on the CT side, it's time to bottle up a bit. Like, that's where you have no real excuse. Like, we give them excuses by saying, oh, it's all in their head and they might feel pressured. It's not good enough. At the end of the day, it has to be better. And that's why people keep talking about Liquid making a move around the AWP. No one talks about it as much with Furia, because Safe was the guy of the Brazilian scene, like, to bring in at that moment.
Yeah.
And it hasn't really worked out. But for Liquid, especially if they're looking internationally, there are options. And there were some other options on the table that could have been taken but weren't.
I just think
would they have been better?
Yeah, I just think that there's very few AWPers that can actually keep up with a pace like that, fortunately. Like,
on T side especially.
Yeah, because when you looked at Furia's demise, or I guess, like, they were on a rise at one point or another in 2020. The time in which that they started to descend out of the rankings and actually have worse results was when Henny was no longer a part of the team. An AWPer that had characterized himself as very hyper aggressive, sometimes to a fault. But that's exactly what Furia were as a competitive force. So who do you have to replace and actually fit into that role properly? There's very few AWPers that actually match that category, because most of them have the same drawback. Most of it's like great CT sides, activation on T sides, sometimes a little hit or miss, and that can be okay, I guess. But if your style is going to be so accelerated on T sides in particular, they're just that's why teams play dynamic. They have slow rounds, they have fast rounds. They build into it, they run protocols, all of these things. That's why T sides are usually structured like that. But for the teams that break that mold, and I think Liquid are now one of those teams, there has to be something. Like, you otherwise you may as well not have an AWPer in the first place. Just get somebody that is a rifler first, and then a hybrid on the side.
Well, that's isn't that what a lot of people suggested NIP are going to be doing? Having Rez pick up the AWP.
Oh, don't get me started on NIP.
I don't want to really get into it too much.
I'm gonna end up ranting about them for RMR stuff,
Yeah, we'll touch on them when it comes to their time, whenever that may be. But that's why I picked Liquid. As much as OC annoys me, Yekindar is so good, especially just with the things he does, and then the fact that he's also mid-rounding, emotionally leading the team. Because Elysian and Naf can be as good as players as they have been over the course of their career. They are not charismatic leading men. I'm sorry. I do not want to go into battle and see Elige in front of me. That'll make me kind of sad. I'm going to be honest. He just doesn't project that personality.
What is that supposed to mean?
Like, he just... Nah. And then Naf has always been the quiet guy of the team anyway. So they're not going to be guys who seize the reins. And if the team's struggling, you bring Yekindar and he says, all right, boys, this is what we're doing. You kind of listen, because he has been outstanding throughout his career. He now has given you a shot of life. He's finding all this massive, glorious impact. And if you have to sacrifice your AWPer to go from being, slot holders in the big divisions to actually competitors, you're not going to turn back, are you?
Yeah, no, probably not. I don't know that I have much to kind of add to that discussion, unfortunately, because I don't believe in Liquid, so.
You don't.
As much as I do appreciate Yekindar as a player, I just find the duality between these rosters. Like, we talk a lot about, like, the inconsistencies of Furia. I think Liquid are Furia, but the North American version. So
yeah. I think Yekindar's better than Art, and I think that's the key difference.
Yeah, true.
In that sort of one-to-one matchup, Yekindar beats Art. Elysian, Naf versus Case Rider Yuri.
They're on different sides of the bracket, though. That's my.
Yeah, that's true. They won't meet each other. They'll meet each other in the grand final. Don't worry. After Liquid beat Fnatic, of course, tomorrow 2:30. This video might not even be out by the time Liquid have played Fnatic tomorrow, because for some reason they had to put the first quarterfinal on a Tuesday. Like, can't you just? It's quarterfinals. Just put them on the same day or something like. Why do we have to start this on Tuesday?
Unlucky.
Yeah, that's the picks at least. Who else should we touch on? There's probably I think we should talk about G2 a bit. No one picked them. I think I felt it was a bit cheese to have picked them alongside Vitality. It almost felt like it was too much. Like they were too good of a duo to pick. Like, I do really believe in this G2 roster, but the question in everyone's mind is Uxie, as if they've never seen a non-fragging IGL. Like, are the only guy who's been here for 7-8 years? Like, this isn't a new thing in the scene. Bots have existed on teams that have been successful before.
it's just we haven't seen it for like a year where that's worked for a top team. I think was the big thing. It's like in-game leaders have gotten better at killing people. Like the thing is, if you watched the Hooksy POV for some of these games, some of the moves he would make, face at level 10 players wouldn't make. You know, some
Right,
of the
yeah.
ways he would peek or take fights, or like some of the positions he'd take in mid rounds, would be like, this is a bad choice, Hooksy, and very often it was.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and some of that might just be nerves. I don't know. He seems to have gotten a lot better for EPL. You know, they didn't drop a single map in their group, which is a very impressive feat as well. You know, almost every other team had something of the sort. So for them to do that, I think is certainly a very good sign. And I won't lie, I watched there's a Launders video where he sort of looks at how Hooksy is playing on Inferno, and you know he's saying that there are certain spots where Hooksy is pushing himself towards to try and get kills, and I could see that. You know, he's playing some very sort of one for one angles at the very least, or angles that are very hard to clear on site executes, and you might be able to get away with one kill, maybe even get two in the more chaotic rounds. And that might be this kind of role that Hooksy ends up fulfilling because that's how he is getting his contributions on the team, which is fine. I think people will accept that, especially if all the other stars are more comfortable in their roles. Because I think the macro from what Hooksy has brought to this team so far has looked impressive. I think that's sometimes the part that has been. Um, I think when you look at somebody like Nexa as a caller, or even if you look at like Alexi B as a caller, I think their micro was always very great. Whether it was taking map control or the small intricacies of, oh, they're going to make this adaptation on this area and we can maybe do this instead. I think that they were always great at that, but sometimes they'd have poor finishes or sometimes poor starts because their macro understanding sometimes didn't link up with what the other team was doing. It would always
Right.
be down to the area controls that I would really give the strengths to those other in-game leaders. But I think Hooksy has done good macro stuff, and even when the rounds haven't worked out plan-wise, they've got high caliber players on this team that can compensate for that sometimes.
Yeah, they have a lot of win conditions.
Yes.
Pretty much four of them now beside him. I think JKS had one rough event to start it off. At this one, yeah, it looked like he did what he had to do. He looked finally a part of the team. And if Monacy and Nico are going to be dropping identical like ratings, putting up 0.75 KPR each, winning ridiculous clutches, finding stupid frags, you could have almost anyone IGL. That's maybe a little hyperbole, but still.
That's almost his direct quote. It's like I could basically go in the server and not kill anyone, and we could win.
Yeah, he could not frag. He could just not talk. Honestly, like if they're going to be fragging like that, he could just not say anything. And clearly, he has. They look far more comfortable in their roles. That's a big thing that was talked about coming in was actually role fit. JKS and Hooksy added, allowing Hunter to slip back into certain like pack player positions. Yeah, it was an upgrade in that sense. They do look more comfortable on the server, and of course, it's led to a pretty rampant display. Not a single map dropped, and everyone but the IGL above 1.1, I think, in their ratings. Yeah, outstanding. I love how Hooksy, everyone's like, oh yeah, look, he played great this one. He's still below 0.6 kills per round. He still didn't shoot anyone. He had a rating that I like to call Bird from Sky syndrome, where purely fragging wise makes no sense. But he somehow has a high kill assist survive traded stat and then also impact on all his kills, so it just kind of works out, even if he got almost none. So it's still something to watch out for, I think, his fragging.
I think neither of us picked it because there's also a part of me that still doubts this will work in the long run, because this is like still a relatively fresh G2. Sometimes the prep for other teams as well could be kind of shaded out because of what they're doing. Like, are they going to play a very anti-strat heavy game? Are they going to go for very default oriented? Or like, what kind of timelines are they looking at to take bomb sites? That kind of that can be kind of an issue when you're looking at analysis, because you want to have the largest amount of sample size to then make your assumption for your team.
Yeah.
So when it comes to Hooksy, maybe the longer this G2 roster succeeds, the more it's destined to fail.
It could be. It could be. But I remember this roster when it was playing under Nexa, who From some sources got immense criticism for his leadership. From other sources got immense praise. At the end of the day, all that mattered was Nico playing some of the best rifler Counter-Strike I think anyone had ever witnessed. And if he comes back into the playoffs with that on the big stage, what are you going to do? Like, if Hooksy exists to make Nico happy, essentially. Literally outside of the server, but also inside the server, it's about making him comfortable, make sure he has his right timings, his right spots, and extending that to as many other players as possible. But we all know who the number one is. It's Nico, and he can just win you entire events, almost. They finish second place every time with next server still. He's that kind of player, and I think that's the IGL's job in this case, is just to make him comfortable. Go from there.
Yeah. Well, I think all of our predictions are going to get screwed over, though, when Mal's win the whole event, so...
Oh, it's entirely possible. I'm going to be honest. It's one of those sod's law things. We didn't touch on them. We didn't think about them. Coming into this event, I barely thought about them. And then they played pretty good Counter-Strike. And it turns out their academy team was actually better all along. Who'd have thunk it? Who'd have thunk it?
Still, NIP, Mouse, they're in the bad books. Making roster moves before the RMRs. Disgusting behavior. At least some teams have reasons. Like Config had to break his arm or ankle. Yeah.
I'm 100% sure he's playing football again. So remember when he injured his wrist years ago playing football? I'm convinced it's the same story. Playing football again.
That would be rough. Yeah,
that'd be kind of funny.
It would, but like Config's already got enough inconsistency in the server. He doesn't need inconsistency in his health.
Actually, I think we all read that HLTV article from Hero today. Config is not actually very inconsistent relative to his role.
I actually didn't read this article.
Oh, you should. It's a banger read. Honestly, everything Nero's put out through HLTV has been some of my favourite content I've ever seen from HLTV. Like, as I said in my tweet, I was like, he's taken it from a database to an actual analytics website. How nice. It's been really interesting. And yeah, that was a good read. Config not actually that inconsistent. It was just, we expected superstar Config every game. Instead, we got a Config playing the role he's supposed to be playing at an actually decent level. It's just we've focused so hard on the 0.87 games, we've forgotten that it's actually not been that bad overall. I think he has been over-examined. That's a very real thing I think's happened here. But look, we're actually well ahead of time on this one. It's 40 minutes in and we already made all our picks, which is strange. So I was thinking, why don't we quickly, just me and you talk through a quick pick'em bracket. So in your world, go through, if you have the bracket in front of you, that'd be great. This is going to involve more work from me as I have to bring up the bracket on the screen now. I didn't have enough time pressure on this video. Playoffs, round one. Who you got winning every matchup?
So, FaZe over Complexity. I have Fnatic over Liquid. I have Na'Vi over Heroic. And I have Fury over Outsiders.
All right, well, we agree on every one, except obviously Liquid are going to meet Fnatic. Okay, to break the UKCS dream. Is what it is. But yeah, quarterfinals.
Cloud9 over FaZe. Well, I'll giggle through that because I'm still like on the fence a little. Fnatic over Mouse.
Oh, you're feeling rough on that one, aren't you?
No. I'm thinking about the next one, really.
Nah, no way. No way you're feeling comfortable saying Fnatic over Mouse.
No, I'm comfortable with that. I don't care about Mouse. These academy players, I'm still to be sold on the whole academy player thing.
Alrighty.
God, I'm gonna say G2 over Na'Vi. Actually.
Oh, bold. Okay. Yeah. Expecting the slump to continue.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna have their best performance. I don't know. That's not even based on anything. That's just pure gut feeling.
Yeah. Okay, that's how I make a lot of my picks.
Yeah, because they've had the same amount of time that Fnatic have had to get better. You know, like in theory they could be lights out. And then I will just pick Furia.
Okay. Well, I've obviously taken FaZe to be Cloud9 because that's the only one of any of these picks that I actually feel genuinely concerned about. Because Cloud9 could just come in and stomp them based off momentum almost. Like it could happen. Mouse, Liquid, I'm taking Liquid. No Fnatic to be seen. G2 Na'Vi, I'm still taking Na'Vi. Simple's now had his room cleaned, so he's breathing clean air again. No way he still plays that badly. G2 going to put up a hell of a fight. It's going to be like all those great matchups we saw from them, on stages. It's going to be close. Be some miracle rounds. In the end, the better team will win. It'll be Na'Vi. And finally, Vitality to beat Furia, as expected. So your semi-finals matchup looks a lot different than mine.
Yeah.
It's Cloud9 Fnatic versus G2 Furia. My word.
Yeah. I know. It's the more I look at it, the more odd it feels. But I'm gonna go Cloud9 to grand finals and G2 to grand final.
Cloud9 G2. It's a game I would love to see. Honestly, that's one thing I kind of regretting about this entire format. You'd see like Cloud9 G2. I want to see every great matchup. That's how these things work. Yeah, I've got FaZe and Vitality upsetting to make the grand final. So I've finally picked an upset in all of this instead of picking the clear favourite in every single match, which I'm sure you agree with. Mm-hmm. So that's the final. I've got Vitality FaZe. So who wins your one? Cloud9 G2. Who you got taking the big dub?
I'm actually gonna go with Cloud9. It is probably recency bias. It is probably just the fact that their group maybe wasn't the most competitive, but I haven't ever been that convinced by Cloud9 in any of their other runs into tournaments, but this one feels good.
Okay, fair enough. And on the official HLTV page where I did this pick 'em just to get the bracket in front of me, I did pick Vitality. I'm just going to change that real quick, because no, they won't beat FaZe. If FaZe make the grand final, it means FaZe are playing like FaZe, which is the only scenario where they don't make the grand final is if they're playing some ghostly apparition version of FaZe who don't know how to play Counter-Strike. So if the regular version of FaZe arrive, the ones who have won a bunch of tournaments this year and looked pretty amazing, FaZe will beat Vitality in that series of events. And it's going to be a banger, though. I think if either one of our brackets play out as we described them, I think it will be pretty entertaining. Mm-hmm. So Cloud9 G2 Grand Final. Oh, I'd love that. I'd eat that up.
Yeah, I think in general, just the playoff bracket that we have is good. I think sometimes we go into these events and we have a playoff bracket that isn't quite what we're looking for. There's maybe too many dark horse teams, and eventually it just ends up becoming that those dark horse teams don't do as well as you may be hoping. I'm kind of looking at you, Movistar Riders, for that Cologne. I mean, you could hope all you want, but they weren't going to win the event.
No, there's only so far hard prep and anti-strength can get. Yeah. At some point, you need more than some Pius and Mopos finding it to win you events.
Yeah, and Mopos couldn't even find that in ESL Pro League. So
no, the Pro League was an interesting one actually for Martinez, but we'll probably talk about that another time. I think I'm quite happy with how we've wrapped this one up.
Yeah,
it should be a great playoff run. Might watch some of these games. I'm going to be in Amsterdam all weekend, so whilst I'm enjoying some coffee, I might be watching some Counter-Strike, having a great time, having a laugh. So that'd be sick, especially if the grand final was lit. I'll be back home by then. Nicely rested up in my bed, the game in front of me.
Sounds like a good time.
It's going to be an absolute banger. All right. Thanks for joining me again. Thanks everyone for watching. Like, sub, comment. Tell me why I'm right. Tell YouM3 why he's wrong down below. The usual, as you do on every video. Just disagree with YouM3 endlessly. And obviously, as we now said, the wager is on. So there's a big reward for a charity of our choosing. I might start doing some live stream stuff where we start doing donations, maybe. I think it'd be cool to get more people involved, sort of thing. Make it more of an event than just the two of us disagreeing with each other. It should be cool. If we can get that organised, we can. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and you'll probably get all the updates as they come through. So yeah. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Goodbye.